Hello, everyone, and I'm back. Okay, so I'm welcoming you to our second discussion for the second semester. Okay, so I'm really back. So we're going to tackle about the elements of fiction. Okay, so since we have studied about fiction, so it could be they are short stories, novels, epics, and etc. Okay, I'm still your teacher for the subject creative nonfiction. So obviously we're going to tackle about the elements of fiction. So what are the basic elements? Okay, you know already the basic elements, right? Of fiction, like the character, the the setting, and etc. Okay. We have also the major elements. So what are they? So we'll be tackling it one after the other. Okay. And for the first one, we have the plot. The plot is obviously the structure of your story. It is also how you arrange your story, like the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay. We have also types of plot. We have the linear plot, which means the actual temporal sequence of your narrative. Okay, so linear, it is the expected scene or happening in the story. Another one is the nonlinear plots. So what is nonlinear plot? It is when the movement of your story is not in chronological order. So linear would mean it follows the traditional format, like beginning, middle, and then end. So most of the stories before they have that kind of sequence or plot. But of today's generation, we have already surpassed such traditional way of presenting your narrative or your story. Okay, so I'll repeat, nonlinear plot when the movement of your story is not in chronological order. We have also literary techniques that we can use in nonlinear plot. So we have the in medias res. Okay, so from the word media or medias, you start at the middle of the story, of course. Actually, media is somewhat related to, like for example, for us, Ilocano, okay, so media, okay, it's in the middle or one half. Okay, just to give you a background of it. The next one is the foreshadowing. So what is all about foreshadowing? So foreshadowing would mean a part of the plot is mentioned at the beginning of the story as a hint or warning. Okay, so a part of the plot. Okay, it may be the conflict, the rising action, the climax, or somewhat an event wherein this particular story will engage you. Okay, will engage your interest if you're going if you're going to continue the story or the narrative. Okay, that's foreshadowing. And the third one is the flashback. So I think this is very known to you already. So flashback would mean it narrates an earlier scene. Okay, you know that already. There there are movies actually that use this flashback. An earlier scene, like for example, uh, teenage years. Okay, so the teenage year scene would first, and then it will come to the beginning of the story or the childhood years. Okay, that's flashback. Okay, so we have also this diagram. So this diagram is called the free tag diagram. So this diagram was done by a German novelist and playwright, Gustav Freytag. So from its name alone, so the diagram mm, was adopted. Okay, so the Freytag's diagram composes five particular setups. Okay, we have the not that, of course. Okay, so the first one we could see at the left side. Okay, so that's the exposition. Okay, what is the meaning of exposition? It is where the story uh, begins. Okay, exposition maybe of the characters, of the settings, of the setting, of the problem. Okay, so it exposes the characters specifically. And then we have the rising action. It is where the conflict is being honed or being created. And the climax, it is the highest point. Okay, like for example, if you are watching a movie, so it's already a battle between the protagonist and antagonist. Like for example, the Maria Clara. So they were already fighting for the approval of their family members, something like that. Or in Philippine movies, like what we have used to watch in our teleserye, uh, it is the face-to-face encounter of the legal wife and the other half and the other wife. Okay, so maybe may sampalan na, something like that. So, like the what do you, the line, "You're nothing," right? You're nothing. You're just a copycat. You're nothing but a second grade trying hard, second rate trying hard, copycat, something like that. So that's in the climax. And then the following action we're in, of course, the emotional part or the yes diminishes. Okay? It is where they at least solve the issue or the problem, and then the last one will be the denoma. So what is in the denoma? It's the final. It's the final countdown. It's the conclusion of the whole story. Okay, that's the Freytag's pyramid, and I hope that you have learned that. Sorry, you have learned that in your 21st century literature of the Philippines and the world class. Okay, I'm very sure of that. Okay, how about the plot of your story? The plot of your story can be in the form of modular or yes, modular would mean the story is divided by modules. Okay, like what we are distributing right now, right? The next one is the episodic. So episodic, it means the story is divided by episodes. So like the K-dramas that we're used to watch or Hollywood movies, okay, it's by episodes. So for novels, it is being divided into chapters, okay? And with short stories, it is being subdivided into subheadings, okay? Please remember that. Okay. Next one is the characters. Okay, obviously, the characters mostly are humans. Okay, so the story will not progress or the plot will not progress without the characters. Of course, if there are no characters involved, so what will be the story, right? So characters are really important when you are creating or making a narrative or story. Another one, so in fables or folk tales, so animals, so the characters mainly are animals. They are being anthropomorphized. Okay, anthropomorphized would mean they talked and behaved like humans. Like traditionally, or yes, locally, we have the tortoise and the turtle, or ang matsing at ang pago. Okay, so they are so this is classified as fable, as a fable. So the characters there were being anthropomorphized because they talk and behave like humans. Okay, another example is the narrative or the story or the novel My Name is Red by Oran Pamuk's. So a coin and a red. So there's other characters, a coin and red. So the color itself serve as speakers. Okay, so if you have time, you can read and visit this novel entitled My Name is Red. Okay, how about the narrator? Narrator is the speaker in a work of fiction. Okay, so the one who is speaking in a work of fiction or any kind of story, we call them as the narrator. Okay, narrator could also be part of the script, right? So the one who is speaking and narrating the story. So that's the narrator. Another thing is to consider the speaker in your story does not have to be the main character or you as the writer. Of course. Okay, the speaker in the story does not have to be the main character or you as the writer. So the narrator could be not part of the story or just an observer, something like that. That is why you have to decide the point of view of your narrator. So these are the following point of view. Okay, the kinds of point of view. Okay, the first one is, of course, obviously first person point of view. So this is the major or minor character or bystander. So bystander would mean observer. It is being signified by the pronoun I or we. So this is not new anymore to you. The second one is obviously second person point of view. So this is being signified by the use of the pronoun you and is not necessarily the person reading the narrative. Of course, you are not the one, right? So it's in the part of the one who wrote that particular narrative. Then the third one is obviously the third person point of view. So by the pronoun, we use the pronoun he for male or man, she for female or women, it for things, and they for plural form. How about the third person point of view? Okay, we have also the classification like objective. So objective when the narrator gives an unbiased POV. Okay, when we say unbiased point of view, of course, what he saw, what he observed, so of course that will be the one he or she will be using in narrating. Okay. The next one is the limited omniscient. Okay. Limited omniscient. So omniscient, by the way, is one of the attributes of the Godhead. Okay. You're the Godhead, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So when we say omniscient, it's all knowing. So God knows everything. Okay. Including the strands of our hairs and everything, number of our bones and everything. But when it is being connected with the word limited, okay, it becomes like this. So the narrator knows the thoughts, opinions of one character. So it's only one character that the narrator knew very well. Okay. And the third one would be by the word omniscient. Okay, omniscient would mean narrator knows the thoughts, opinions of all the characters and everything about the places and events. Okay, it's not only one now, it's all the characters, including the places and events going on or included in the story. I hope that we have not missed anything about that. Okay, let's try this. Okay, this is the first reading. How your narrator and the characters speak is very important in your story. So the narration and or dialogue sets the time and place of the story. Let's consider these dialogues from the anthology Filipino popular tales collected by Dean S. Fansler. Dean, Dean S. Fansler. That's in your book, actually. I'll try to read. I'll try to narrate the story for you. So you're very lucky, huh? So Saku was left to prepare their food. While he was busy cooking, he heard a voice saying, "Ha ha, what a nice meal you're preparing. Hurry up, I'm hungry." On looking up, Saku saw on the top of the tree a horrible creature, a very large black man with a long beard. That this was Pugut. Saku said to him, "Abba, I'm not cooking this food for you. My companions and I are hungry." Okay, let's see the other one. When Jago and Juan heard the shout, they could not help feeling cheated. They made their way through the crowd and said to the king, "Great Majesty, pray hear us. In the name of justice, pray hear us." "Who calls?" asked the king of a guard nearby. "Bring him here." The guard obeyed and led the two men before the king. Okay, I hope that we have learned something from these two die or two what do you call it, excerpt. So the first dialogue, okay, that one. The first dialogue comes from the story Saku and his adventures. And the next one came from the legend of Prince Oswaldo. So reading through the narration and the dialogues can give us an idea as to the political and economic background of the characters. I'm so sorry, it's here. Okay, the first one was Saku and his adventures, then the legend of Prince Oswaldo. So clear language register or the level of formality of your writing gives justice to your story. Like in the first one, right? So long before, so since we have this kind of creature here in the Philippines, so we believe that this story happened here in the Philippines or locally or in provinces. But the other one is I believe it's international because it's all about the kings and queens, okay, the monarchy because of the presence of the king or majesty. Okay, I hope that we have learned something from that. Next one is the conflict. So the conflict is really the problem that needs to be resolved at the end of your story. Okay, it could be person versus person, person versus self, person versus event, person versus nature, person versus society. And for scientific fiction, it could be a cyborg, okay, or a machine versus human society. So we normally actually these days, when we look upon the themes of many Hollywood movies, they talk about science fiction. It's all about cyborgs or machines. What else? Robots, okay, versus human society. Aliens, yeah. And for fantasy, it's all about person versus supernatural events. Okay, since it's fantasy, so it's all about supernatural events. Okay, let's now proceed to the story of a letter. Okay, so the story of a letter. Okay, allow me to introduce Mr. Carlos Bulosan, the author. He was born to impoverished Ilocano parents in Pangasinan. He left for America at the age of 17. Wow. He became a labor organizer, and he is best known by his work, America is in the Heart. So you can also read the whole, what do you call this, summarized biography of him in page 8 of our book. This is the plot of this story. So I have already summarized it. And if you want to read the whole story, it's so inspiring, I believe. Okay, so I am challenging you. If you have your book, read the whole story. So at the beginning of the story, the author was narrating his childhood experiences. Of course, living in a barrio is not that easy during those times, during the American times. Okay. And then the conflict was that their family, specifically his father, received a letter from his brother Berto. Okay. And what's the problem there? If they receive a letter, of course, there shouldn't be any problem, but there's a problem there. So the letter is written in English. Okay. So of course, during those times, they're still living in a simple, and of course in Pangasinan, maybe they're used to speak Pangalatot or Pangasinense. Okay. And for us here in the province of Isabela, it could be Tagalog or Ilocano, and some Ibanag and whatsoever. So English before was a foreign language then. That's why it became the problem in the story. And at the middle of the narrative, so a teacher came to their place and offered himself to teach in Spanish. Actually, the father in the story of the narrator was trying to search for a man who can translate that English into their own vernacular. Okay, so that's the climax or the middle. Yes, the climax or the middle. Though even though there was a teacher who came in, and of course the only thing that he could teach is Spanish, not America, well, not American. And for the following action, he was able to explore places outside his comfort zone. So as he grew up, he was given a chance to explore places because maybe there he wants also to expand the horizon of his influence as well as his growth. Okay, that's why he went to Baguio City, to Manila, and until he realized he was already in Manila, and then to America. And then the end of the story, he was able to find his brother Nicasio. Actually, two of his brothers went to America. The other one is Berto. Okay, and then of course the content of the letter. Okay. So actually, when the author was already in America, so he decided to what do you call this? To get to get the letter to be sent by his father, but it took, I think it's 6 months before that letter was handed to him. Okay, and okay, so this is the content of the letter. You know, it's very simple. During those times, it is really hard to understand if you are not an English speaker and you don't know anything about English. So this is how Berto wrote the letter. Dear Father, America is a great country. Tall buildings, wide good land, the people walking, but I feel sad. I am writing you this hour of my sentimental. Okay, so that's the thing. It's very simple as of today, but before they couldn't even know how to read it, how to comprehend it. That's why they need one a person who can translate that. But the translation, I think, was not given to his father because he died. Okay. Um, you will know this story, or you'll know what I'm saying here when you read actually the whole story. So it's just a map. Okay, it's just a gist of what had happened. Okay, but I assure you that the narrative or the piece is very inspiring. Okay, let's now proceed to the setting. The setting refers to where, basically the where and when the story happened. It identifies as well the milieu of your story. Milieu would mean the physical and the social cultural setting in which the story takes place. Okay. So in the story, the story of a letter. So in Pangasinan, then Baguio, Manila, and then in America. Okay, that's the just physical and social cultural setting. So of course, from being in the Philippines, went to America, it's a different thing before. Okay, different race, different tradition, different language, name it. They are really different. There's a big difference. Okay, after knowing the setting, okay, another thing for setting. Setting for the setting, you must keep in mind that the way your characters talk, behave, and react depends on their cultural, sociological, political, and religious background. For example, the syntax of a toddler's dialogue should be different from a doctor's or an attorney. Of course, when you are writing, like for example, a children's story, the approach is very different, okay, from the the work of a doctor or an attorney. So of course, when you say doctor and an attorney, they are really dignified. Okay, they know how to conduct themselves as good as possible, and they know how to expound things. But for children's story, something that is motivating, something that's appealing to the heart, because what we are building when we write children's stories are the values embedded there. Okay, so that's setting. Next one is the theme, which will be the last. Okay, the theme is when you write or read a word of fiction, you must also consider the theme, or other words for theme is the main idea. So it has to have something, yeah, an insight that would open the eyes of readers to social realities. Okay, that is why one thing to consider when you write a story or a narrative is the theme or the main idea. So what will be the values, their lessons, the moral lessons that they could get from it. Okay, and something that would change them from a bad behavior to good behavior, and something that will push them, okay, to do things, to know their worth as an individual. Okay, and for fables and children's stories, so the lesson or theme is written at the end of the narrative. And sometimes it says here, you can mention it somewhere in your story, or it could just be implied. Okay, somewhere in the story, could be in the introduction or the beginning, the middle or the ending, or it's implied. It means that it's your own interpretation of the story. That's implied. The word implied means your own interpretation of the story. Okay, so overall, okay, the elements of fiction, we have started with the plot. Next is the character, the conflict. We have also discussed some parts of the story of a letter, then the setting and the theme. And I hope that this discussion has supplied something for you as you continue your endeavor in pursuing this strand, the human strand. Okay, thank you so much for listening. And just a reminder, so next meeting will be covering the the land of poetry. Okay, what's in a poetry, okay, what its content, and how to understand them. Okay, so thank you so much for your time, and God bless, and continue uh, reading your book, for this is just a supplemental video.